All right, everybody, welcome to the Weekend Hustle podcast. My name is Shelby Oleschleicher, your host, and today we have such an honorable guest with us that I'm really excited to share with you and share some of his knowledge and wisdom with his 40 going on plus years of being in the barrel racing industry. Today we have Lance Grays with us, and I'm really excited to dive into some of Lance's accomplishments and just his backstory and involvement in the barrel racing world internationally and in America. So Lance Graves, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And to get started, I always like to hear a little bit about the beginning. What was your story that really ultimately led you here? You can share us a little bit about your story and what brought you to this point.
Well, sure. Well, I appreciate the invitation, Shelby. It's nice to see you again and to get to chat and catch up on some stuff. And it's been a minute since I've recounted my life story, and I'm not really sure how much I've ever gone into great details. But I've been around for a really long time. I was there at the very first Old Fort Days Futurity, and I've seen a lot. I've seen it all happen. I started out. My father moved us to an extremely backwoods rural property when I was a little boy. I was 3. We started riding because he didn't want to raise his children in the city lifestyle. So that's how it started. I started riding when I was 3, and by the time I turned 4 or 5, I was pretty handy for a little guy. And they started this new thing called barrel racing fraternities, and my dad thought that was the coolest event at the little play days and the little show-dios that we had around. And he said, I think there's a future in this barrel racing sport. This is 45 years ago, and he said. He goes, I think if the world realizes that barrel racing is just the same as horse racing, except everybody can do it, it might be one of these days be the biggest thing. So he was pretty much a visionary kind of a guy, not much of a cowboy, but a numbers guy and a smart guy. And he just kind of saw that I had a gift and kind of found a way to make that go for us in a way that would be positive and keep his kid busy. And it turned into a career. By the time I was 7, I was riding futurity horses. So it's been a long and winding road, and I've seen a lot change, and there's been a lot of changes with me and my life. And I've certainly got to, if you watch 4 decades of this barrel racing industry across the United States and then across the world in the last 20 years, I've seen a lot. So I do get asked a lot of questions, and I'm happy to try to answer them from someone who's actually been there and seen it and lived it and been part of it.
Amazing. Yeah. So you're definitely the guy that we're looking for. I'm curious. So you just mentioned your dad. What really was his involvement, and how much did his impact of realizing and being a little bit kind of innovative with realizing the potential of barrel racing, how did that impact you and your future, and maybe even how you now approach it today?
Well, so my father was a CPA and was just all about numbers. He was a very rigid and an exacting kind of a person. So, and I'm really not really that kind of guy. It doesn't really been my temperament. I'm a pretty, free spirit and animal lover. And my dad would have been the opposite of that. So I think that I've grown over the years to kind of meet in the middle. What I learned from him is I learned discipline. I learned that quite quickly as a child. So when you learn discipline as a child, it turns into your own self-discipline, and then it makes life a little bit easier as far as that goes. When I was a small child, I just thought I was having a good time, but we were poor. We grew up really poor. And we'd buy a horse for $5 and sell it for $25 and at the auction the next weekend or whatever happened that way. So, the very first time that we had the first winner I had, he paid $180 for, and that horse ended up bringing $5,000. And to us, that would be like $150,000 today. You know what I mean? So I think that's when my dad realized this is going to take off. It is going to be something that's real. They just started the very first fraternities were the TBRA, the Texas Barrel Racers Association, which is not, I don't think it's a thing anymore. But when I was a child, it was the only one, and it was the only actual barrel racers organization. And they put on a fraterity, and we went down there and watched that when I was probably 5 in the AQHA shows. So he exposed me and let me see that. And the horses have always been a passion for me, just because I love horses and I love animals overall. But he just really guided that into a direction where, he thought that was really super sustainable, and he thought that it's something that so many people could enjoy, and not just that tiny niche market, if that makes any sense. So, and he was right. He was right about all that, but all of the business sense. My father was a brilliant businessman and was brilliant with numbers, and I learned enough of that to keep me afloat on this end, and just mixed it with the other gifts that God gave me.
Yeah, absolutely. And your gifts is horses and understanding the animals and being able to basically take your skills, build a relationship with these animals and really make them shine, as well as yourself based on your resume. You've done a really good job. So when you were younger, was that always like on you to do the training and to be flipping these horses? Or was it kind of a group effort? Or were you mostly the only rider in the family?
So I was the only rider in the family. My father would take care of the, selling the horses and the marketing stuff. When I was really little, it was just my job to, to get them to ride well or get them to be user friendly and get them, make them peaceful where other people would want to own them and have a good time with them. And so when I was a really little kid, it was just, a big fun game. I got to go play with the horses until I didn't really realize that we were building a farm and, my life career out of it. When I was doing it, it wasn't that big of a realization that it was just a little boy loving his horses. You know what I mean?
And then it's like you wake up one day and you're like, wow, I've been on this life path for so long since you were a little boy,
Right.
building to get where you are. And I think that's kind of beautiful, like to retrospect and just kind of look at it in hindsight to see just that natural progression for you, that it almost seems like that you were like meant to do all that to get you where you are today.
So, I graduated high school, number one in my class. I was valedictorian and I was offered a full ride to go to Baylor University on an academic scholarship. And my dad's like, you're not going to go to college. And I'm like, I'm not going to college because I was pretty much a daddy's boy and do whatever I was told. That why would you want to take a 4-year break in your career where you're already successful to go to college when you already are successful in your career right now? You have the lucky gift to be able to skip having to go through that, wonder what you're good at, wonder what you're doing. So like I gave my valedictorian speech and took my trophy, and that was the last time I did that. So upon looking back at the decisions that, he either made for me or inspired me to make or whatever else, he was right from the beginning. He chose the right path for me.
And do you feel like that was still right? Like to not go to college now looking back?
So, my daughter just graduated high school, also number one in her class, and she's going to Oklahoma State University on an academic and a rodeo scholarship. And to be honest with you, I have always promoted and pushed the fact that my daughter is a smart girl. And I've always put that in the forefront of her mind, that she used her mind, not her body, so she doesn't have to limp around and be crippled like her dad, right? She got offered rides to Seton Hall and a couple Ivy League schools. She's a brilliant little girl. And when she got offered the rodeo scholarship to go to Oklahoma State, I was like, she was beyond thrilled. And in my mind, I'm like, why would she be so thrilled to have to go to college and work and go take care of a horse and ride her horse when she could just go and, become a doctor and work in an air conditioned, comfortable place and whatever. Cause I'm telling you, so long, it didn't make sense to me. It's like I worked so hard so those girls wouldn't have to. But the reality is a person's passion is their passion. And we don't get to pick that or choose that or dictate what somebody loves. And as soon as she was offered that rodeo team scholarship, she was doubly inspired to go to university and to go and have her horse with her, because she have her, he's an emotional support animal at this point, right? so it was oddly challenging for me to think about. I don't know. In my mind, living back here on the farm and all these, for all these years, that my thought was just to get her out so she wouldn't have to do it, and she don't want out and didn't want to. It's just interesting. As we grow, even though we age, we still continue learning as humans, and we still continue growing as humans to figure out who we are as much as who somebody else is. And it's odd the things that we learn from our own children.
Yeah, absolutely. And I touched on that a little bit, and I'd like to talk about it. I mean, why not talk about it right now? So I'm a new mom, and I've seen you and share and seen your praise, and also just like seeing the love that you have for your girls and really pushing them to become their best and let them chase their dreams. Like you said, their passions, what they're meant to do here. And I'd like to touch a little bit on that. What was it like in the earlier days with juggling your career, your business, and also being a dad and trying to be the best of both worlds at the same time?
It was defeating, and it was really a challenging time for me. I had to make a decision to change. You usually have two options in life, either to break the cycle or repeat the cycle. And I could have just continued on, traveling 200,000 miles a year in my truck and trailer and sent checks home and whatever. I just couldn't do that. It's not the kind of dad that I wanted to be. You know what I mean? I still want to be the person that my children trust and that they appreciate and that they respect. I don't necessarily have never wanted to be like their friends. I told Macy, my daughter, my older daughter, she's 19 and my little one's 12. And I said, here's the deal. On your 30th birthday, we could become friends. But until you're 29 and a half, I'm just going to be your dad because that's what you need. It's what you need from me. You know what I mean? You need your dad. I believe that little girls need their daddies. I think that means time. I think that means face-to-face time. And I couldn't do that. I mean, for the last decade, I haven't traveled more than a couple of states away, and I used to travel, blow up 3 trucks a year. You know what I'm saying? And so I just told my clients, this is how it's going to go. I'm not going to go to 50 fraternities this year. That's how it is. I'm going to stay home, and I'm going to go to Little League, and I'm a member of the PTA, and I'm going to do bake sales, and I'm a single dad. I'm the only person that's involved in my children's lives, and we're good with that. It's all good. And that's how we roll. And my girls have been the single greatest gifts in my existence. And it took a process. It took me about 2 years to get my life stopped and restarted. You know, I mean, I met a group of people that live in my community that I've lived with my entire life I barely knew them. You know what I mean? Until one of them becomes the swim coach or the ballet teacher or whoever our new girl is for cheerleading or whatever. You know, that's probably helped me too as a coach on my end and what I do, seeing all the other people interacting with a different mindset of people, because usually, you know, barrel racers and horse show people are pretty similar mindset people. So it's been a great decade, but it took about 2 years for me to grind the wheels down to what had been my life for 15 years, every year, you know, but that was my decision. And I would have done it twice. You know what I mean? I'd do it all over again 2 more times.
Absolutely. That's the one thing that you can never replace is the time that you could have with them. And I remember hearing just because I'm kind of going through that, like I'm probably you at those 2 years because my girl's only 6 months old. And so I'm doing that a lot of, I want to be more present and what are my goals and does it align with those things that I want of being a more present parent and doing and having these experiences? Because the thing is they're only going to be 2 years old in like a 2-year period. But when they're teens, it's going to last 10 years. So it's like when they're really young, you really don't get that time that much. It's not a long span that they're a baby. And it is a hard adjustment. It's not really closing the page or changing the chapter. It's really closing and changing the entire book of who you are and what you've done. I can imagine just like kind of making new rules, making new priorities. What did that process look like for you?
It was shocking to most people around me. I've been very blessed to have consistent, consecutive winners year after year. And when you're training a horse for someone and you tell the owner, listen, you have a winner, but I'm not going to take your winner to the events because it's basketball season. And they look at you like you have 2 heads that have lost your mind, or that they're like, oh, well, I get that. So when does she finish her last ball game? Then I know where I am. You know what I mean? And for several clients that couldn't work. You know, winter's a big time, or especially it used to be. Winter was a really big time for those 3-year-olds to try to cash out and win a lot of money. And you know, the landscape of the futurity world's changed a little bit and whatever with all the breeders programs and fade and stuff through those summer and the fall. But anyway, the way that it just wouldn't work out for me. My older daughter is extremely active in junior high basketball and grade school basketball. And I mean, she's won 6 state championships in 3 different organizations and playing basketball since she was in the 6th grade. So we're like extremely active in that. And there's absolutely no way that I can drive cross country and stay gone for 45 days and miss any of that. And I didn't. And I will always be able to say, you know, I was there for her first grade school ball game. I was there for her last grade school ball game. I was there her first junior high ball game, her last junior high, her first high school, her last high school. I never missed any of that. And if I have to explain to somebody 20 years from now as I'm fixing to pass away, I don't want to be saying, hey, I really hate that I didn't take that cult of yours that I thought was the winner, the fraternity that year, because I went to my child's last high school basketball game or because I went prom dress shopping with her. You know what I mean? Because whoever I won the trophy for is not going to be standing there with me on my last minute. But the girl I shot for prom dresses with, she's going to be there.
It is about just that perspective, I think, and looking at it in that big scale. Because I've thought of that as well, where it's like, I remember hearing just even from other good people that when these gold buckles, it's like the dust is going to settle on them just the same. They're all going to collect up these awards and everything that we're striving for, I think the most impactful moments in our lives are what we're going to remember, not that one barrel race that we missed or we didn't miss. And it is, I think, probably it sounds like it's just easier to have like a priority, like know what's important, and then you kind of base your decisions around that, even though they might be tough and kind of changing our identity a little bit. But
Right.
ultimately, like you said, these are the moments.
I think that if we're going to have real talk, let's have real talk. You want to, Shelby?
Absolutely. I love real talk.
Okay, so here's some real talk for you, okay? For whatever reason, our industry draws a very narcissistic personality group of people. Barrel racing draws narcissism. People who want self-praise, and people who want a trophy, and people who want to feel good about themselves, people who want to feel winners, and it's the most important thing. And there are a lot of industries like that. I get that. But what happens is you can't win enough trophies or enough buckles that they don't collect that dust. And eventually you will die alone. So who's going to care how many of those trophies that you won or how cool that one run was back in 1997 or what in the grand scheme of real life? What have you really added to the world? You know, if I hadn't met all the friends that I've met and the communities I've met and the people that I feel like I've influenced, the young people and across the world, the trophies wouldn't make up for that. And I've won all the trophies. I have them all in this room. Everyone I ever said, I'm probably the most fortunate athlete that I know. I've literally reached every goal I ever set in my entire career. And none of them, I would throw them all away to spend another day with my girls, you know? And I think that you have to reach a level of maturity and you have to grow out of some of that me phase to be able to understand and appreciate. Because what happens, this is what happens, Shelby, we age and then we look up one day and it's too late. It's too late to go back and be good to people. It's too late to go back and be kind. It's too late to go back and build the relationships that mean anything. And then you're left with a dusty room of trophies that somebody is going to dump at a pawn shop when you're dead. So where's the victory and all that? I mean, I was there the first time my kid did a backflip and she screamed or had all, I mean, I have a lifetime of memories besides winning Fort Smith or besides winning the Congress. You know, I have an actual real life of experiences that I would have never known were available if I had not become a dad.
It's funny you bring that up. Well, not funny, but I remember I listened to an episode recently of Haley Kinsel, and she said that rodeo is, or it can be a very like self-centered game. It can be very much, like you said, kind of like the narcissistic. It's all about me. And it can be very much all our own internal validation. Like we're doing everything just for us. And it is, what are you doing for other people? Like what's your impact? How are you actually changing stuff? And I love that you mentioned that because I think we as an industry do have it we're looking at it a little wrong. And I think it is starting to change, which I love that it is more focused on like the output. What are you actually putting out? Is it all about those wins? Because like you said, at the end of the day, you're not going to remember that. And one of my favorite things that I just like to say to kind of keep me grounded is I say, okay, then what? So you win Old Fort Days.
Right.
Then what? Like, now what are you doing? Like that win is over. Like, now what? Now what are you left with? And I think when you think of that, of like, okay, now what? It changes your view of being like, yeah, like what is actually important?
For sure it does. I can remember I come close so many times, a couple times, and my dad had been sick and he had a lot of trouble. This was just before he passed. And at that point, you know, when I was leading my mare back down into the arena to do the interviews and the pictures and all that good stuff and whatever, I was thinking about how many times I had dreamed as a little boy what that moment was going to be like. You know what I mean? And at that point, you know, Macy was 5, 6, 7. Macy, my older daughter, she was. Anyway, at that point, I was already a dad, and she was that big, and I just thought to myself, so I'm like, this is my moment. This is my, you know, roses around the neck. This is my moment. And I'm walking down there, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm really happy how she snapped that first barrel off. I got to get her home. Macy needs to go to bed. It's late, but I haven't fed her yet. It was not at all what I thought that this moment was going to be. In my mind, it was going to be this Olympic gold medal moment where my whole life would now suddenly be complete and everything that I had ever struggled for and worked so hard for finally meant something. You know what I mean? Like it was that moment. And I'm leaving the arena and carrying my saddle or whoever's, and I'm thinking to myself, well, now what? And the first thing that this is the honest to God what I thought. Well, I can pay the hay bill was my part when I won. That's literally where my head went. And so that moment was very surreal to understanding about what is actually important and what isn't, because we get so wrapped up in the fact that our sport is not life. We have life, and this is a sport. It's literally all it is. And I don't care who you are or how much you won in our little sport. Whatever you won in our sport does not make you amazing. What makes you amazing is you and how you handle yourself after that. And I sit back year after year, and I've watched program after program come through, and I've watched trainer after trainer come through, or little kids that are great little kids, and then they don't ride when they get older and blah, blah. I've seen every type of scenario, the lifespan of every scenario that goes through there. And the only people that have continued to stay and continued to be successful are people who genuinely love what they're doing and genuinely have a passion for it, and not people who are just trying to bleed the industry or the program for what it is.
It makes me think of just people always thinking that getting a result is going to lead to happiness, as you called having passion, right, and just drive for what they're doing. It's passion for life. It's like you need to be happy with yourself and with life versus thinking that win is going to get that for you. Like you said, you thought it was probably amazing to have that experience, because I think a lot of us are chasing that, thinking, once I win this, I'm going to feel complete. Once I win this, then I'll be finally happy. But like you said, you had that win that you've been striving for. And then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, that really wasn't it. So if that's not it, then what is it?
It's a mind trip. It was probably more of a negative mental impact on me than I thought it was going to be. Like, I never thought that reaching the ultimate goal of my lifetime would fall short. Like you just said, because it literally wasn't more significant than paying the hay bill or making sure that, Macy ate before she could go to bed. Do you know what I mean? And I never thought that I would have been that person in that place. But if we're lucky in life, we continue to grow and we continue to learn. And hopefully we continue to change and evolve to be, better humans, better citizens, better daddies, better friends, better whatever. And we don't always, and we all mess up and we all do whatever. But ultimately, the goal is to try to grow and to be better. And, I talk about that in our industry of the raging narcissism. You can tell by the amount of contestants. This is why I always judge people. What have you done to give back? What have you done to give back to the industry? What are you doing besides taking? What do you do each day of your life besides take? Take from your sponsors, take from your owners, take from the barrel race, take from the producers, take from the whatever. What are you doing besides taking? And it's real easy to look up. Just go down the list. Let's go down the list of all these people and see which one of you appreciate where you are and are giving back.
So what is your advice then, let's say, for someone that's kind of on that path and maybe they don't really realize it yet? What would you say to them to maybe help open their awareness to the philosophy that you believe is true?
That's a great question. I think that it's very important, if you don't know how to think outside your own scope, that you put yourself in a situation where you can understand empathetic response. Because if you can't understand how to be empathetic to another person or another animal or another situation outside of your own world, then you are way behind and you better start learning. I think that, and if that means you pull over on when you're driving down the road and move a turtle out of the road so you don't hit it, or you don't step on a frog when you flip the lights on in the hall of the barn at night, you wait till he bounces out of your way. I think we have responsibilities as humans to be kinder to those who are weaker than us. If you're the kind of person that takes satisfaction in watching the other people's failures and brings that, what I call the mean girl syndrome out, if that's you, you probably need to readjust, because your life is not going to end the way that you see it's going to end. And that's just I've lived a lot of life now, and I'm 54 years old, and I've lived a lot of life now, probably enough for a 100-year-old person. I could die tomorrow and I'd had a full life. But I have learned a lot about people, and I've learned a lot about living in situations, and it's helped a lot. I've traveled so far, and I've met so many people who actually have suffered in their life. You know what I mean? People who really do understand what it's like to be what real poverty is, and meeting people that have struggled their way through and then turn around and reach back and try to pull other people out of that. Those are the people that inspire me. Those are the people I want to be like. Those people I want to be my friends. It's okay to think about somebody besides yourself. It's okay.
And that's horses included. I like that you say you put empathy in horses, or just something that's kind of weaker than us, because as humans, we are the ultimate. So it is our job. And I think we can make a lot more change than maybe we give ourselves credit for. We feel like we're not in control of stuff, but we really are the ultimate. Like, we are like the alpha in the world. So it is our responsibility. I like that you bring that up. And I'd like to touch about that even with horse training, because you see the whole spectrum of trainers, from completely holistic to somewhere in the middle to someone that I would never want to send any horse or any animal to for any sort of training.
Sure.
So what has that been like? Either has that changed and evolved over time? And what would you say to someone that's maybe trying to also, like, if they're new in the industry, they don't really know what's right or wrong. How can we almost develop our own internal gauge of developing that empathy and using that as a meter to know when things are wrong and things are right?
If you want to become a trainer and a successful trainer, you have to be able to look at yourself honestly, okay? Which is also very difficult in a narcissistic group of people, because, it's easier to be the vet's fault, the horse shearer's fault, the guy that rode the horse's fault before me, whoever saddled my horse yesterday, what she ate last week. There's all these reasons why it can be not my fault, right? But if we're actually going to be a professional, then we have to be able to look at ourselves and know, okay, this is my strong point. This is not my strong point. So I think if I were breaking out into the training today, I would have a list of everything about myself that I deem positive. And I would have a list of everything about myself that I would deem weak. Okay. For instance, I'll use myself as an example. Okay. I am extremely good with very hot, insane fillies. If she's nuts, I can get her to do what I want her to do. If she is completely irrational, totally erratic, nobody can get around or talk to her. If she's crazy, I'm your guy. Now, if you bring me a stud colt that I'm leading and he pulls his head over and takes a couple bites of grass and I correct him, he will go back and do it again repeatedly. I'm not the guy that's going to spank your stallion like he probably need. I'm not going to dominate your stallion and make him be a good boy as well as someone else would. Okay. So this is me being honest and looking at myself and my skills. Okay. So most of my career has been centered around, there are many people who will tell Landscape stories about something wild one of my mares did out back at a futurity or a barrel race, right? Because there's lots of them. But I'll always run to that fragile filly side. I'll be her knight in shining armor. I'm going to be your hero. It's okay. It's okay, because all I really need from you is 14 seconds. I just need 14 seconds. And the rest of the 23 hours of the day, girl, I'm all yours. We'll just make it happen. I just need you for right now. So that's always been my skill. And I think that maybe I learned that as a small child, right in the scary Bronx, that my dad that always brought in here when I was little. And because I'm not a very big man, obviously, you know that. So I was always a really little boy too. So for me, I had to use my understanding of the horse and follow that empathy and follow reading the animal to get them to do what I wanted them to do, because that's how old school natural horsemanship worked. You know what I mean? And what was I going to, I weighed 50 pounds. What am I going to, I'm not going to punish an animal into doing anything. So that skill from me evolved from that situation. But I recognize that, and I know what my skill is, and I know what my weak points are. So even to this day, I follow that guideline in the new horses that I take in and that I train and whatever. But I think if we're becoming a new trainer now and you want to do this, is like, it's very important to just look at yourself for real. Okay, this is what I really can do, and this is what I can't do. And it's okay. It's okay to know what you're strong at and what you're weak at. And obviously, we're going to work on all the weak stuff the best we can. But it's more important, if you are going to follow an empathetic and compassionate horsemanship line of training and teaching, you have to know who you are, and then you have to be able to read and understand the animal that you're training. And you have to match those two together. You have to match yourself to the type of animal that suits your strong points, that your strong points will help. That's about the clearest that I can break that down, in my opinion. You will almost never see me spank a horse. Okay. I just almost never. Like, I don't tie horses around here. We don't bid horses up at my house. I don't tie horses around. I don't do all those things. But I also start with an animal that would not be conducive behavior for. They would be horrified by that. So I don't ever say people, oh, don't ever do this or don't ever do that. I just say, we don't do that with this horse that I have. But I've learned after 50 years which horses will respond to me, that I feel like will respond to me, and which horses will respond the way that I am as a horseman. Know yourself, know your audience. Donald Trump knows his audience. It's just like that. It's the same. So you have to know your audience with your horse, know your audience with your owners, with yourself. But most important is to be able to actually look at yourself and to be able to say, this is me.
And that takes vulnerability and effort and time to be honest with yourself. And I mean, sometimes we don't like what we see, so we just pretend and, we're like, oh, we'll act in an accordance of not our true self, as I like to say. It's like we're kind of not living in alignment with who we are.
Right.
I think having that awareness with our horses, they feed off that as well. And I'd like to touch base a little bit.
For sure.
You have a very more like natural energy. You're very like calming. Horses probably look at you as like a natural leader, not a forced leader that I'm going to dominate and force you into submission.
Right.
Like, come take my hand. Let's go on this together. Let's have a good time and like, it'll be okay. And can you talk a little bit about that, of just how that has been a positive experience with your horse training, of having that type of approach of more gentle, not whipping, not forcing, not submitting type mentality?
So since I was a really little boy, I've always been very intuitive and very sensitive to animals. I have people come to me all the time, LG, tell me what my horse is thinking. What's he doing? What's going on? Where's my horse's head? And I'll be around for a minute. I can tell them. I think that when you're a little kid and your only friends are horses and you live 30 miles from the nearest person and you spend all your time with them, a bridge gets built. And if you build a bridge, if you spend the time to build a bridge, you are less likely to burn that bridge down and destroy it if you're the one that built it in the first place. I've always had a lot of patience, and I've always been comfortable taking time to teach and to get things to do this and whatever. And it seemed to me that always the horses that were the most afraid and the most frightened would always give me a window of opportunity to talk to them. And every time, including today, 50 years later, every time a horse that is shut off and closed off gives me the look and opens, it is a special victory in my heart. Every time a horse gives me a window into their soul, I'm appreciative. And all horses don't have that same kind of temperament, because a lot of horses will show up and they'll be friends with you or me or my puppy, or they'll be friends. And some of them aren't like that. Some of them, they choose. And it's always been a really badge of honor for me, just between me and the horse. When the horse like that comes along, it gives me a shot. It gives me an opening. Every horse I ever had that was truly, truly great all gave me an opening. I've had several great world champions that would have been world champions for a lot of people. And I've had a couple of world champions that would have never cracked the door without me. And I also know that too. You know what I mean? I'm not blind to my own accomplishments, and I don't mind giving credit to whoever's been involved and do whatever. But I think that as I learned when I grew up, those really sensitive kind of fillies, the ones that were the most afraid, were the ones that when they finally gave you their heart, tried twice as hard. So you always ended up with maybe double the effort, but you had twice the animal on the backside. And that was a victory that meant something to me inside. And I didn't realize it was just me building horsemanship as a child.
That's a beautiful thing. And that, I think, is kind of a big part of our piece of doing this, is to get a glimpse inside of that, because there are mirror there. It's a soul to soul relationship. And I think it is beautiful, and maybe something that people don't give themselves the ability to experience. And do you know what I mean? Like,
I do, for sure.
Get down on that level. And I think, horses are such a great opportunity that a lot of people don't have, that people that are in poverty don't get to experience the impact that horses can make on our lives if we allow it to happen. And it sounds like
right.
You've really been able to naturally had that ability to see that and to tap into that. And I think that's amazing. I love that. I love that so much. Going forward into some of the training you're saying with you're good at fillies, just also, obviously, futurity is your deal. I love futurity as well. It's kind of like I've been doing a bit of rodeo and I realized, I think I'm just a futurity person. Like I just seem to, I try to,
Yeah.
I can say I checked it off the list, but I just feel like it's not my bag. So going into the futurity stuff, I'm curious to touch a little bit on your program with training. When do you like to get horses in? What's kind of your beginning step in your process, and just kind of the timeline of getting your horses to the futurities and actually performing and succeeding as well as you want them to?
Now we have a leeway of an entire year because, most of the events except for Fort Smith and the Juvie are for 4 and 5 instead of 3 and 4. So I think that's kind of relaxed most people's programs that I know of. But basically what I like to do is I like to get we start those babies in the winter of their 2-year-old year, or December as their year-old is turning 2, and we'll ride them until in the spring, and then I'll turn them back loose in the summer. And then in the summer, when I pick them back up in September, October, I will make sure that I can get all of those 2-year-olds started on the pattern. I will get them galloping through the pattern, like where they know what they're doing and not bound up and uncomfortable, but easy and galloping through. And then I turn them out through the winter again. And then when we start back in the spring, then we start going after them. You start back in March, and we'll kind of take it from there and try to get ready for November. But I'm big on. I like to section it up and break it up a little bit. That's pretty intense. When you start doing a lot of pattern work, I like to do short spurts and don't do a lot of mental pressure. So I try to make everything easy and comfortable and relaxed. And then by the time after you do this series of start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, then it turns into a pattern by the time they're late 3-year-old, and it's like not such a big deal to add a little pressure on top of that. It's about giving pressure to the colt without the colt understanding that they've been pressured at all. It's the same way when you're racing your children, okay? Sydney started riding when she was, as soon as I could hold her. But she started riding by herself when she was 4. So she won her first barrel race when she was 4. And then she won the BFA 2D World Championship when she was 6. The trick with that is when you have your child, she never understood that was pressure, because she had been doing it so much and she just kept easing a little bit faster, and a little faster until, she was just, the numbers were just right. So I think that the big challenge is to work through pressure and stress without either the child or the horse knowing they're being pressured and stressed, because it's way easier to learn and perform if you don't feel this thing over your head. I'm all about putting the pressure on and taking it off, and putting it on and taking it off until it becomes muscle memory and you're numb to it and it doesn't mean anything anymore.
So can you define what pressure and stress is to you?
So if I've been training a colt here at the ranch and say she has 90 days on her, okay, of whatever, and she's galloping the barrel pattern, all right? So I take her to her very first jackpot in exhibition for her practice. The very first time I go through the gate, I'm going to make her gallop all the way through. I'm not going to let her walk in trots. Not going to let her see the sides. I'm going to make her gallop the first time. And then I'm going to go a second time, and I'm going to trot her through, and I might stop her, pat her on the head, and let her look everywhere. And then the third time, I'm going to go just a little bit faster than what I felt like she would have been comfortable with. So a little faster gallop. Or even if it's the same gallop, if she was so overwhelmed by the first time. But I'm teaching her by just galloping the first time. That's a lot of stress. You wouldn't think that just galloping the pattern is a lot of stress. But I've taught her from the first day, I have to gallop the whole way. That's stress. And that's pressure. And then I immediately bring her back down, do my second exhibition. I'll trot her, tell her everything's okay. And I'll give her just a little pressure again. And then I'm all done. So, and I go to a lot of exhibitions. So I repeat that process until pretty much she's like, not a big deal. Not a big deal. If Lance picks my reins up, I'm going to go faster, and I'm going to go fast. And if he drops my reins down and sets back, he's not going to. But that's how I introduce pressure. And pressure to me is adding, even if it's a 0.01 more than what you just did, that's a little bit of pressure. You teach them how to just keep pushing the bar by continuing to back it back off. Eventually, pressure ends up insignificant.
I love that. I think pressure also could be like a synonym to progress. Seems like that 0.1%. It's like the pressure is also the progress. It's like pushing it a little bit more to get that progress is also kind of like the pressure, I would say.
I would say that makes sense too. Yes, absolutely.
I like that. Okay. We can touch a little bit on your philosophy on the pattern. I've seen you work horses, and I was very memorized and kind of captivated and just kind of like, I haven't seen that done before, but I really liked it and appreciate it. So can you explain a little bit of your philosophy when you're taking these horses on the pattern and what your end goal is when you're about to go run them?
My philosophy is that every movement in life has a rhythm, and it's just like different genres of dance or different genres of music. There's still an ultimate rhythm to everything. You see with basketball players, tennis players, you see somebody, they say that, oh, she did her grooves. You got, Venus Williams or Serena's in her, you know what I mean? So like there's a rhythm to everything. And for me, when I'm training a horse, I try to tap into that animal's inner rhythm, their flow, how they feel underneath me, how they step, how their motion is, their rhythm. And then I try to match their rhythm to what I want them to do, which is go around the barrel pattern. So as soon as I can tap into the rhythm of my horse and how my horse moves, when I go to the barrel pattern, I try to place them in a place where it's super easy. This is so not a big deal. We're just going to make a right and two lefts or a left and two rights. Super easy. No big deal. We're going to make it as simple and as non-technical and as easy for them as we can make it. And the more that we know about that horse's natural movement and that horse's natural motion, and the more we can tap into that, the easier we can make them to do, the easier we can make this sport for them. Because ultimately, they don't go to sleep at night going, oh my God, I hope he takes me into the arena and runs me around the barrels tomorrow. You know what I mean? They're doing that for us. So the easier we can make it for them and the less stressful we can make it for them, the better they're going to do it for us, right? So, I mean, if you got to go to work every day and you don't know you're at work, you think you're just playing around, you're going to do better than going, oh my God, this guy's like calling me and spur the crap out of me and rip my face off. I don't want to be around. So my philosophy is when I'm breaking these colts out and I'm getting them to ride, I'm getting them started, whatever, every horse I've ever had that's been a great world champion had their own song. So they had their own song here in the barn, in the house, the girls I'm singing with them, whatever. I play it over and over the arena when I'm doing pattern work. There's always a song that matches up to the rhythm of the horse that I'm riding. And if you'll find that if you're an iPod person or you have your earphones, you will find a song. You'll find yourself humming a song when you're riding a horse. It'll happen. If you're an intuitive horseman, there will be a song that pops into your head when you're riding your horse. It will. Test the theory. I challenge you to have all of your viewers that watch this or listen to this podcast to challenge it. Say, does my horse have a song? I promise you a song will come into you where you will go, oh my gosh, this is totally him or totally her. So I think if you tap into that rhythm, you turn your horse into a dance partner with yourself, and then you learn to dance together. You teach them, because ultimately the sport's about us. It's not about them. They don't care if they're in barrel. We just need to inspire them to do what we want to do as the speed we want to do it.
I love that. I'm definitely everybody will have to share on Weekend Hustle on some platform. Give us a comment and tell us what the song is that came to your head, because I will definitely be touching back with you to tell you what song it is.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. That would be great. I've had some interesting songs, and so for years those horses, we'd send those mares to Brazil. I'd send a CD with them. I'd say this is her song, by the way.
Okay, sure thing. Whatever you guys.
You know what's really funny though, because I have family down there now. You know what I mean? They're pretty open to whatever. And when I first started meeting them, they thought it was a little bit odd about something, but I've noticed their culture has evolved too, and there's a lot of pretty intuitive horse people down there.
Oh yeah.
So they get it too.
That's a natural, perfect bridge that I wanted to go to, is talking about Brazil. I know we've been over an hour. Like, do you have anything you have to do, or did you want to do keep diving into this, or should we do a part 2? Or what are you thinking?
Why don't we do this? I have clients that's going to be here probably about 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay.
So why don't you process through all this stuff, and then you think about other stuff you want to ask me, then we'll do another section. You want to do that?
So we're going to touch all on Brazil and everything about international horses and training and styles and everything that goes on across different borders, as long as other questions that come up, and maybe some listeners, if they have anything else that they're thinking of asking Lance after this episode, we will touch base with Lance shortly and get a part 2 out. Sound good?
Sounds like a great plan. I'm happy to do it. This is so much fun.
It was so much fun. Awesome. Okay, well, I'll get through this, and I just want to say thank you again, and I look forward to part 2.